Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dozer, and this is actually the 80th episode of this podcast. And the mission here is to expose the quacks and gimmicks in the marketing industry while featuring some great marketers and entrepreneurs along the way. And I already know I'm going to butcher your name, Mike, but on this episode, we have Mike Hurrah. He's based in Canada, so that's a French last name. I apologize about that. But Mike really caught my attention. We met at Kit's Craft and Commerce Conference a few weeks ago in Boise, Idaho. And Mike runs a six-figure community in the investing and dividend stocks niche. So, Mike, thank you so much for coming on this episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. I look forward to diving in more.
Ryan, thank you for having me. So just for the fun of it, because anyway, like when I talk, I can speak strange as well because English is my second language, but the last name is Iru. But I know
Ehu.
it's,
All right.
yeah, AI, you're getting closer now. So
Perfect.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, you run a six-figure community called Dividend Stocks Rock. What was the moment, or I guess that light bulb moment for you to kind of go in on the community world and just start building it from the ground up?
Well, I started blogging about personal finance back in 2006 when, like, if you were making like $100 a month back then online, it was just like you made it kind of thing. It was like almost impossible to
Was
make
that like
money
the
out of that.
AdSense in the Azoic era?
Oh yeah, that was exactly it. Like most of the income was like AdSense or paid links and banners, and that was pretty much it. So it was just more like a sideline as anything. I had a career as a financial planner in the meantime. So I was blogging about personal finance, of course, I had a huge interest about investing. And then in 2010, after 4 years blogging, my partner and I, we started to just buy and sell blogs just for fun. And also, if you think about blogs back then, it was like kind of like buying a rental property that sometimes you will pay like, I don't know, like 13 times or 15 times the annual revenue. Well, for blogs, it was like 1.5 to 2 times the annual revenue. So 18 to 24 months. And with our network, it was easy to fill it with paid links and like all the things that Google didn't like back then. But anyways, it was just enough so we could get their money back within less than 12 months. So in 2010, I buy the Dividend Guy blog. And I was already passionate about investing, but I was looking for a strategy back then. I was just like buying and selling, having a lot of fun. But then as I got older, I had less time. So it was a bit harder as well to spend like 3, 4 hours a day. So grew up this interest into dividend investing, like boosted the blog a lot. This one, I didn't sold any links because I really wanted to keep it clean. And I grew the newsletter membership, like not the membership, but the subscribers to like roughly 10,000. And then 2 years down the road in 2012, I have the same guy who sold me Dividend Guy blog, worked on a structure for a membership that was Dividend Stocks Rock. Kind of realized he didn't have the time to do anything with that. So he just sold it to us to like $2,500, like not much, just basically paying for the infrastructure, like a few like license that were there, and that was it. So it was like an empty shell. But then I thought, well, that could be interesting as a diversification of source of revenue, because even back then in 2012, we're just making money selling paid links, again, AdSense, and that was pretty much it. So we started working on creating that membership. And then in 2013, a year later, we launched DSR in September. And within the first few months, we had about 150 members back then. So not a big home run at first, but just something to get started. But still, it was a sideline for me, so I didn't mind that much.
That's awesome. And I want to get into some of the community growth strategies that you've used in a little bit. But I guess, first of all, Mike, what separates you from the hundreds, if not thousands, of finance gurus out there trying to grow their communities? What makes you different?
Well, I guess being among the first financial bloggers back then since 2006, I kind of get a lot more experience than a lot of like those new finfluencers, if you can
Mm.
call it this way. And no offense to them, but it's just a different type of thing. So just for example, in 2012, as I was working and building DSR, we also lost a big part of our revenue because there was the Panda update. So then we lost all our rankings in Google. And then I learned back then, 13 years ago, that you'd have to own your real estate. So you cannot build on the back of like a social media platform as today, or back then it was building the my entire business was built on Google. I lost everything and then I figured out, okay, so now I'm going to own my mailing list and that will be the core. Ironically, I mean, just when we came back from that conference that we just met, like that was a big talk. Like, do not build your stuff on social media. I'm like, well, I learned that 13 years ago, and still today, it's kind of like a new thing for a lot of creators. So it gives me that edge. And the second thing is, I used to have a career in the financial industry. So being a financial planner and then a private banker, I got to talk to a lot of like institutional portfolio managers, people making millions of dollars. So I got access to how products are built, like covered called ETFs, for example, or linked notes. So I know exactly how they are built from behind the scenes. So that gives me that edge as well of knowledge. And I think like one thing that I love about how I've built the trust with my members and people that follows me is I'm 100% transparent. So I'm not trying to hide something. I've been out in public since 2006, so it's almost like 20 years now that I'm like fully transparent, showing my portfolio, running updates every month, so people can actually copycat my portfolio if they wish. I don't definitely don't suggest they do that, but if they're curious and they want to know like my big success, but also my big failures, I'm an open book.
Right. And that's, you learned that lesson early on. Luckily, right? There's still people like you mentioned that are relying on YouTube and social media algorithms, the whole own versus rent your traffic. Are you familiar with Investor Junkie? Does that name ring a bell?
Yes, I do.
I actually had Larry Ludwig. He was one of the first people on this show, and I still keep in touch with them on Twitter and whatnot. So that's funny that you mentioned the early financial blogging days, and I instantly thought of Investor Junkie.
Yeah, I remember him. Like it's been a long time since I've talked with him, but yeah, I mean, he was part of the OGs back then.
Yeah, that's right. So let's talk about community growth strategies now. So there's a million different community platforms, and that's kind of the hot new thing, right? Is building a community online with School and Mighty Networks and Circle and all these big platforms. Just high level, Mike, what are just some strategies that you've used to kind of grow your community to what it's become today?
So, just want to make like a small differentiation because DSR is more like a membership. So, we do have a forum where investors can discuss among them. But keep in mind, investing in money is quite taboo. So, most people don't want to really share. So, they log into the membership, they get the information they need to do their stock research, they manage their portfolio, and they get out. So, they don't necessarily connect with people. So I have built another set, like another community, which is called Retirement Loop. That was launched on Mighty Networks actually last December, and that grew up very fast because I was able to use the trust I gained with my current members and also my free newsletter, and then offer that the opportunity to people that wants to build a retirement plan and don't want to pay for a financial advisor to do that, to learn as they go and from other retirees at Retirement Loop. So this one is more like the community. And I think one thing is super important in both cases in terms of growth is to connect with those members. So at DSR, I do it with private webinars. So every month I do a private webinars where I do a live Q&A for like 2 hours. Sometimes it goes up to 3 hours. And it's the purpose is really to gain that trust, but also explain a lot more my process and connect with people. Because of course, when you talk for 3 hours, you're not just talking about investment. Sometimes we throw jokes, we talk about hockey, and then we just like do the full circle. And I think that connecting with people, and same thing on Mighty Network for Retirement Loop, I'm trying to be active every single day, at least post a couple of comments, ask questions to other members because I want them to engage. And the best way to do that is actually to show them the way, right? So to start sharing personal stuff and connecting with them whenever there's a story that is relatable to them.
Yeah, and as someone who runs my own community called AI Marketing Insiders on School, nothing to the caliber of what you're doing, but I can tell you it's a lot of work, right? Just from building this from the ground up. So, one question I have for you, Mike, is why the membership model over courses, coaching, affiliate marketing? Why that route?
So here's the thing. When I started DSR, I was making a lot more money as a private banker, obviously. But the problem with a job is you trade time for money. And then if you do coaching, it's exactly the same thing.
For sure.
The other thing that I didn't like as a private banker or a financial planner is every first of the year, you start with zero. You're just like, yeah, you built a lot of things, but those numbers were like already paid. You got your commission, and now you have to start from zero over and over again. With a membership, you have that recurring revenue, which is super nice. Because if I made 100 sales for my membership in September of last year, well, this year I'm going to have between 80 to 90 sales done while I'm actually sleeping. So that part of recurring revenue and sustainable income, kind of like ironically similar to dividend growth investing, where you invest in companies that will continue and pay a dividend. That what attracted me to that business model. So it's slower at first because like most of my membership, they pay the annual subscription, so you get the money now and then you have to deliver the service for 12 months before getting paid
Right.
again. But once you get that wheel rolling for a few years, now I'm receiving subscription payment every single day of the year, regardless of what I'm doing. And this is what really attracted me to that business model.
Let's get a little tactical with community pricing here. I think we talked about this at the conference a little bit, but why the annual versus the monthly, and how are you thinking about pricing each of those?
So the way I do it at DSR is I have like the regular membership and then the pro membership. So there's already a difference with different features. And what I did is to have a third tier price is I also have the monthly membership. So you can register and pay monthly. You get exactly the same access than the annual regular membership. It's just that you like I do the classic. If you pay upfront for a year, you save like 2 months. So you pay 10 months out of 12. So, or if not, if you just want to try it, you just go monthly. And ironically, I do have like 60, almost like 2/3 of my members, almost close to actually now 70% are pro members. And a vast majority of the regular members are paying annual just to save on the fees. So the monthly membership is actually just there to kind of like show that there's an escalation of prices. But I would say I get maybe like 20 members out of like 4,000 that are paying monthly, maybe 30, but it's negligible. It's really just to give them access, and most of the time they either stay for a few months and then they leave, or they upgrade right away. So it's
Right.
either one or the other. They wanted to try, and they like it's not a right fit for them. That's fine. They leave, or they upgrade right away just to save more money. Because I mean, investing is a long term thing. So if you like a website or a service, you're going to stay there for several years, not just for a few months.
That's what I've learned about the whole community thing too, is like it's balancing that churn, getting the people on the annual versus the monthly. There's a whole game to it for sure. And it's definitely psychological. One thing I want to ask you too, Mike, in terms of the growth of this community, what does your content engine look like? Right. So I guess walk me through your content strategy from creating, promoting, repurposing, trying to drive new memberships inside that community.
So I actually use Nathan Barry flywheel model here.
Okay.
So if you look it for Google, you're gonna like find it quite fast. So what I do is, since I do a lot of webinars, during those webinars, I always end with Q&As. Like regardless if it's a free webinar where I have like a promotion, or if it's a private webinar, which is 100% Q&A. So I get a lot of questions. Out of those questions, I get all the content I need and all the ideas to write the private newsletter, like the paid newsletter that is one of the feature of DSR. From that newsletter, I can then repurpose part of that content into blog posts, into YouTube videos, or podcasts. So sometimes if I have a question about like a Canadian bank, for example, well, I can also do a 10-minute Moose on the Loose podcast episode on it, which is going to take me literally just 10 minutes to record because I already did the research. So it's a good way to repurpose the content. All the free content always lead people to download the lead magnet with, of course, the email. So I drive all my traffic, all my listeners, all my watchers to one thing, my newsletter. And from that newsletter, I will run promotions and campaigns where I send emails, I do a webinar. So it's a full like 10, 12 days event where then I offer them a lifetime discount on the subscription, and they have more members, and then more members come into more webinars, more question, and then the flywheel keeps on going. I
Yeah, I was
actually
just
have
going to
like
be
a
a
long
little.
list of stuff that I never get to talk about, but they're still there. So it's kind of like a never ending idea flywheel.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was going to get a little tactical with your email strategy. Obviously, we were just at Kids Conference, right? So I'm curious, you got the lead magnet, right? What does your email drip sequence look like when someone gets that lead magnet? Is it 3 days, 5 days? What's your call to action in the third or fifth email, right? Kind of explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because I'm working on something different right now. So I'm going to tell you what I'm doing right now and what is going to happen in probably like in a month from now. So right now, what happened is they go into a sequence of a like twice a week email for about 8 weeks. So we're getting like slowly educating them about investing, pain points about like what and when to buy, what and when to sell, stuff like that, that investors are always wondering why, how to do that. And then eventually you have like at the end of the sequence, you have an offer to subscribe to DSR. At the same time, they have a weekly email, which is an aggregate, kind of like a content aggregator of like what I did during the week, because I have like two podcasts, I have a YouTube channel, and then I have also a lot of blogs. So of
You
course
got a
I'm
lot of
using a
content.
lot of,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm obviously using AI to take the newsletter and write like some of that stuff. So I use that 10-80-10 strategy. So 10% input first, then 80% done by ChatGPT, and then another 10% to refine and make sure that everything is still written in my voice and the topics is good. But that's pretty much how I do it. That brings some people, but what brings the most of them into Dividend Stocks Rocks is really when I do those email campaigns like 3-4 times a year, like on specific themes.
Interesting. I was going to ask you too about your traffic and attribution. Where do you say most of your audience growth is coming from? Is it SEO, YouTube, podcasts? Talk about that a little bit.
Um, it's a mix of about everything because I don't necessarily focus on one thing. That's the Panda update with Google taught me is yes, you can get like you can be like get a lot of traffic from YouTube for a while, and then it's gonna dry down or just slow down, and then you move to another thing. So instead, I'm trying to be kind of like everywhere type of tactics and just drive everyone to the newsletter. So I'm getting about 10 people new a day, and this is what I'm trying to nurture. So whenever I do a new campaign, when I focus on a specific pain point instead of trying to talk about so many different things, this is where I get the most people signing up for DSR, especially for that, because I show them the pain point, and then throughout the newsletter, throughout the emails and the webinar, I show the solution that is found within DSR. So they can do them by themselves, but there's a shortcut way using our tools to make it easier, faster, and just straightforward. And this is where I get most people signing up for the membership.
That doesn't surprise me with the email. Do you have any little quick tips on like types of subject lines that have worked out pretty well for you? Just you don't have to give specific examples, but are there like different formatting? Are there different words, right? Talk about that. I'm just curious to hear your take.
One thing that I've noticed for the campaign actually is to first not be afraid to send a lot of emails when you're running a campaign. So too many people, and I've discussed that with so many people. I mean, the size of your mailing list is just like a big ego thing. But really, the way I see it is you subscribe to my free newsletter. Thank you for your time. But then if you don't want to buy something from me, eventually I don't mind if you leave. Like,
You're costing you
in
money.
fact,
Yeah.
yeah, and in fact, I kind of like wish that you either make a decision, kind of like force you to say, okay, Ryan, you either going to subscribe or you're going to unsubscribe and leave. And that's totally fine because I'm no use for you if you just read my free stuff all the time either. So when I run that campaign, even on the last day, I'm trying to send like 2 and 3 emails. And I've worked on an interesting tactic here is I've tried that twice and it worked perfectly. So I'm going to do that every time now. It's kind of like a new thing. I track everyone that click on the purchase button, but do not subscribe. And at the end, towards the end of the campaign, I'm sending just those people an extra 2 more emails. One is I use my sales page, I send it to ChatGPT, and then I ask it to highlight all the objections that it could have. So then I have like a clear idea of like the best objections. Because of course you're going to get like 25 objections. Now you can select maybe 3, 4, or 5 that are really, really strong in your opinion. And what I do after that is I look into my testimonials and the emails I receive from members telling me how they solve those kind of objections. And I created an email just saying, okay, Ryan, you hesitated to subscribe to DSR because you wonder about this. And then, well, that was exactly the same thing as John. And here's how he found out the answer within DSR. So it's kind of like an counter objection email that is only being sent to people that kind of like are on the fence, but you don't know exactly what is the problem you did not address during the webinar or the campaign. So having an extra one or two emails gives you this extra chance. And it like the I did that twice, once for retirement loop and once for DSR so far, and I got an extra like 4, 5, 6 sales on both times on the extra day where I was sending those emails. So I know that it was exactly that email that triggered a sell.
Yeah, you mentioned something really good about the ego with the number of subscribers that you have on your mailing list, right? That's why for me, I actually have an automation that every 100 days, if you don't open an email within a 100-day time span, you're gone, right?
Yeah.
I don't want you, messing around cost, because you and I both know as CRMs and your list keep growing, it gets super expensive. So the more quality people on our database, that's what we want. We don't want people kicking tires, costing us money with CRM bills. I would rather just have those people leave completely. And I think that is a
Yep.
point that a lot of creators and just people new to the email marketing game don't really understand, in my opinion.
And that also helps your delivery as well. Because
That
if you
too.
have a higher opening rate and a higher click-through rate, well, Google is like less likely, for example, for Gmail, that a lot of people have their Gmail address. They're less likely to put that in the promotion tab or the spam folder if they see, oh, this guy has like 60% open rate. Well, it's probably good stuff. So I'm going to let it into the inbox.
That's a really good point on deliverability. I didn't even think about that. I want to talk about AI again. You mentioned it earlier of how you're using it with repurposing webinars and whatnot. Talk about some of your other processes that you're using AI. Like, what tools are you using? Are there different use cases where you're using AI for? Explain kind of how you're using AI with growing your community.
Yeah, so I've started using AI about, I don't know, like about a year ago, but really I'm dabbling into it even more these days. So I created a few, I focused on ChatGPT, and I know that there are a lot more tools, but I want to master one before I get to know the others. And that's probably like the biggest problem when you have like a small team is I'm kind of like doing everything sometimes. So you lack of time to put that into your priority. So I started with GPT, and then I created those like smaller GPTs to focus on specific tasks. So one thing that I've done is I have a team of analysts that are reviewing quarterly earnings. And to help them out, I created a GPT that will pull out not only the quarterly earnings, but also will go through the earnings called transcript to get all the good information and format it into 5 takeaways. So then the analyst doesn't have to spend like an hour to go through all the numbers where they have the summary already and they can just dig when there's something that is not business as usual. I mean, let's be honest, Coca-Cola used to sell Coke, selling Coke, likely going to sell Coke next quarter as well. So what you really want to know is if there was an acquisition or if there was a problem during that specific quarter. So that GPT will highlight it right away instead of you trying to figure out what's happening for like 45 minutes before just saying, oh, okay, so everything was fine.
That's a
The
genius use case that you just talked about there in your particular niche of scraping transcripts of earnings calls, right? There's 4 earnings calls, 1 earnings call a quarter, I believe, right? For every
yeah,
publicly traded company. And when you're leveraging AI to scrape transcripts of earnings calls and come up with takeaways in your voice and your thought process, I just want to reiterate that is a really unique use case I don't think I've heard yet.
and it's actually it requires a lot of time to build it the right way because at first it's just going to pull out any kind of earnings transcript like from like because it doesn't make any difference into the
Right.
date. So you have to really teach it. And one thing that I was fortunate about is DSR exists since 2013. So this means I have more than a decade of newsletters. So I've uploaded everything into that chat GPT so it can understand not only just my voice, but the way I see things, the way I analyze. And then I can, even though you're taking my trick right now and say, oh, I'm going to create a GPT that will go through the earnings calls, you're not going to have the same level of input as I do because you do not have that 13 years of newsletters that will actually teach. It's literally like just having like an intern that finished their bachelor degree in finance and say, okay, so now you're going to go through like a decade of content. And now after that, you're going to work for me.
Yeah, data is the moat, man. I mean, quality inputs equals quality outputs. Everyone wants
Yeah.
AI to be a silver bullet for them, but those who have immense amount of data behind them are going to get far superior outputs versus someone just trying to go to the main screen of Chat GPT and just shotgunning away.
Yeah, definitely. I tried that at first, just very frustrating and poor performance.
Yeah, absolutely. One quick question I want to ask you that's not, I guess, too related, but the topic of kind of selling out or burning out, running a community and being a creator. Two things that I come in contact with and think about all the time. What is your strategy for avoiding burnout and avoiding selling out to an audience?
So, I was a financial planner for 10 years, right? So I got a base salary and then commission on the number of clients that you bring in. And I've noticed a lot of financial planners were really good at shuffling papers around, being busy like the entire day. They were like working 10 hours a day, but not doing like critical tasks to
Welcome to
actually.
corporate America.
Yeah, there you go. It was exactly that, right? It's just like, oh, I'm so busy, like filling those paperworks and this and that. And I was really bad at paperworks, but I was really good at closing clients because I focused on that. So when I started working on my business, one thing that I started to do on day one is trying to imagine myself that I pay myself $400 an hour. So shuffling paper around at $400 an hour is damn expensive. So you don't want to do that. So then it forces you to focus on critical tasks that will actually create value for your business, not trying to do everything all the time. And whenever I find something that is redundant or that brings down my level of energy, or simply just not justify the fact that it's not worth $400 an hour, I either pay someone else to do it, or these days I'm actually creating a GPT. So I'm spending like 4 hours creating the GPT for me, and then it does it for me instead.
Yeah.
So that's
No,
why I really focus on getting that time back. That's the whole reason why I quit my job anyway. So I wanted to be rich of time first more than anything else.
yeah, I love that. I read The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. I'm sure you probably know what that is. And that kind of inspired me to do what I'm doing right now. So similar for sure. One last thing I want to ask you, Mike, before we wrap this up. If someone wants to follow in your footsteps, not necessarily in the financial niche, but just in general, they want to build a six-figure community. What is just some high-level advice that you would give someone listening to this?
That's a very good question. I'd say don't try to do everything. I've noticed that because and that reminds me like a lot of conversation I had at Craft and Commerce conference where people are just like, yeah, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. And they think like they're 10 years ahead, and then they're just like build that empire. And I'm like, dude, you don't even have a newsletter right now. So focus on simple tasks that will bring you just to the next level. Don't start to have like champagne problems right away. You do not have an empire. Focus on simple things to build your stuff and do not go too far ahead. Just like at first, you're just like, okay, I need an idea. I need a newsletter. I start to pull out content. That's like just basic stuff. But instead of trying to like create that perfect automation, and the other thing is, instead of like trying to build the perfect product or service or community, just start right away. When I created Retirement Loop, it was done within a month and a half. And I was fully transparent with people that subscribe though. But I told them it's in the making. Here's the main idea. And here's what's going to happen in the next 6 months if you subscribe today. But if you subscribe today and you open the membership website, it's a blank page. There's nothing. You're going to give me your money and we're going to build that trust together. So, of course, a lot of people came from my membership at first, but that was a much better way to test the market and actually get the money up front. So now I was able on day 2 to hire someone running the community full time and hiring someone to do be a retirement coach. Money that I would have not been able to spend if I had not opened a membership saying, hey, Ryan, like, here's the idea. Here's what I'm going to do. Now, if you trust me, you pay for the membership right now. You're going to get a huge discount to what's going to be once it's going to be in full mode. But in the meantime, well, you get to give your ideas, your suggestion, and we're going to build this thing together. So instead of like trying to be perfect, I just say, yeah, I'm going to like build the plane as I fly and figure it out all the way. And it's actually a pretty good way to do it, as long as you're fully transparent. So you're not just saying people, hey, I have like a full membership, just give me your money. And then, oh yeah, forgot to tell you it's empty.
Unfortunately, there's probably some of those out there, but that's rock
Yeah.
solid advice, right? I mean, obviously being something that's published is trying to just work around and trying to get something perfect. So completely resonate with that. Well, Mike, this has been a fun chat, fun episode with you here. Where should people follow you besides dividendstocksrock.com to learn more about what you're doing?
Well, if you want to know more about my investment strategy, you can download a dividend income for life guide at dividendstocksrock.com/income. And if not, just look for the dividend guy. So there's the blog, the podcast, YouTube channel. It's everything under the dividend guy. So I'm relatively easy to find these days.
All right, the dividend guy. Well, Mike, thank you so much for hopping on this episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. And thank you to everyone for listening. Be sure to tune in again next time.